the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Reflections by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. The Demon and the Wise Man. A demon was sitting outside the house of a wise man one day, when a seeker after truth came to the door. "Aha!" thought the devil, "I must dust off my temptations." So he prepared all kinds of snares and transmitted them into the disciple's mind. He conjured up pictures of fame and prosperity, of dignity and honour, of power and pleasures. But the devout one, through his many years' study and discipline, had acquired defences against all these things, and he fought them down as soon as they ever entered his head. Then he went into the presence of the master. The demon crept invisibly into the room and watched. The seeker after truth first noticed that the teacher was seated on the floor, and his heart warmed to him. This is indeed a humble man, he thought. Then he realized that the sage was taking no notice of him at all. He began to wonder whether this was, after all, the man for him. Then he saw that the sage was dressed in clothes different from those which he expected, and his faith in him began to waver. When the master had spoken a few words, the would-be disciple soon realized that he did not like him at all. He quit the house, saying, "My search must still continue." When he was disappearing into the distance, the master, through his inner faculties, spoke to the demon, saying, "You need not have worried, trickster. He was yours all the time, you know." Debunking. Once upon a time, people used to become established as authority figures and were then respected for centuries, even thousands of years. Then came the age of debunking, which is still with us. People started to debunk almost as soon as a reputation had been built up. But there is another phase now. People are being debunked almost before they become famous. Improvement. If you want to make an ordinary man happy, or think that he is happy, give him money, power, flattery, gifts, honours. If you want to make a wise man happy, improve yourself. The Two Demons. A junior devil said to a senior one, "If only we could stop man from using sovereign intellect. Can we not devise a scheme to block his efforts towards self-development?" The elder answered, "My child, it has been done already. Man was eons ago convinced that he possesses choice and sovereign intellect as some sort of gift. He has long since, with only a few insignificant exceptions, ceased to listen to anyone who says that he has a real intellect waiting to be developed." Contraries. Try to remember, as a corrective against automatic assumptions, the story of the wise dervish and the mother. A woman was carrying her baby down a hill when she saw what looked like a reverend dervish, and she asked him to bless her child. He immediately started to curse it. This made her weep bitterly and regard the man as utterly evil. What she did not know about him was that he belonged to a realm where things always went by contraries. Motives of the Rabbit. A fox was running through a glade when he saw a rabbit bolting into a burrow. As the rabbit sat there quivering, the fox went up to the entrance to the hole. He said, "Are you afraid?" "Not afraid in the usual sense," said the rabbit, "but I am meditating upon the evils of creatures and my own shortcomings, my sins and my need to do good." He went on like this for quite a time, for he had indeed convinced himself by now that some higher power had affected him. The fox, thoroughly bored, padded off on his way. And the rabbit? He became the founding father of the rabbit divines, who spent their time alternately frightening themselves individually and each other collectively. Reading a book. People say that they want to learn, but if they don't know how and don't want to learn how, nobody can do much more than inform them of the facts. Remember the man who, told to read a book, said, "No, I tried that once and it didn't work." Goat leader. Some goats at pasture saw a lion in the distance. A few of them were alarmed and ran to the leader of the herd for his help and interpretation. The lion came nearer, looked at the goats, and roared. "No need to worry," said the goat leader, "and I can prove it. See what an ugly colour his fur is, and as for his bleat, you can tell by that he'll never amount to anything." Broth and cooks. A man told me how much time and effort he had spent going from one guru to another. "Too many cooks, I suppose you'll tell me, spoil the broth," he said. He thought I was a guru of the kind which is most publicly plentiful. Among this plenitude of gurus, they often take me for one of their number too. The consequence of being the reluctant recipient of numerous guru confidences is that I have realized that the reverse of the proverb is only too tragically true. It may confidently be enunciated that too many broths spoil the cooks. Trapped rat. A rat became trapped in a natural rocky labyrinth one day. The passages were so winding and confused, and the entrances so few and so small, that this rat, as the time passed, became more and more frenzied, thinner, fierce, and obsessed by the need to attack whatever it was that he imagined had projected him into this fate. It so happened that at the very moment when he was thin enough to get through an aperture to freedom, a dog was terrorizing the whole rat community just outside. When the trapped rat appeared, he took one look at this dog, and in front of the assembled rats, leapt upon it and sunk his teeth into its jugular vein. He was, of course, unanimously elected greatest rat of all time. Now this rat was a hero. Does this mean that real heroes do not exist, that all is accident? No, but it does mean that when rats are trapped, they will try, and will, believe anything. I. Contemplate much less the "I shall progress" than the "I stand in my way." The rich man who was a beggar. Once upon a time, and this is a true story, there was a rich man. He had inherited vast wealth. Putting it all away and retaining just enough for the journey, he travelled to a country where he was not known, to see whether, if he had not been born rich, he would have been able to make his fortune. After many vicissitudes, this man amassed great riches and proved to himself that he had indeed the talent to make money. But in the process, he learnt many other things. Now he had a great deal of money and wanted to give it away, so that it might be shared with those who had little. He remembered that if he were to divide his money into equal amounts and give a little to each person in the world, there would not be enough to give everyone even a fraction of a grain of food. So he determined upon a test. "I will give to those whom I meet who are themselves generous," he thought. Dressing himself as a beggar, he went to various countries where he was not known. He made friends with people and asked them for loans. He begged from door to door in some places. He took menial jobs and worked in them for a while. And all the time he was making notes of the people who were generous, the people who did not take advantage of his supposed poverty. He spent 20 years in this quest. At the end of this time, he returned to the place where his treasure was concealed, and repaid 1,000-fold everyone who had been good to him. Those who had refused him, he left to their inevitable end. The Philosopher. I am thankful that the very bigotry of some academics is of value to the cause of sanity, whether they realize it or not. A certain illustrious philosopher, evidently frustrated by my answers to his questions, once roared at me, in the presence of some 60 other people who had up to that moment respected him as an objective person, "Who do you think you are? One of your books is longer than the New Testament." Thinking that one knows. People who think they know all are often insufferable, rather like those who imagine that they know nothing. The Intelligent Man. A child, full of promise, was so intelligent that his parents and his teachers encouraged him to take an equal interest in anything which caught his eye, whenever he showed that he was attracted to it. Years later, having tried 100 different arts, and all the customary roads to success, he was penniless and miserable and decided to take a job. He found himself in the office of a millionaire, whom he soon saw was fairly stupid and capable of understanding only one idea at a time. "You can have the job," said the millionaire. "Thank you," said the brilliant man, "but I would like to ask you just one question." "And what is that?" "I have read a great deal about you, how you understand everything you see, and how your extraordinary energy and wide interests have made you what you are. But I don't find you to be like that at all. Furthermore, I have tried since I was a child to be like that, and look at me." "Oh, don't take it too hard, son," said the tycoon. "But millionaires like me pay people to write things like that. First, it flatters us. And secondly, it ensures us a good supply of labour like yourself, people who haven't made the grade." Hooliganism. A dog who happened to be in a especially virtuous mood once saw a cat chasing a mouse. "Can nobody," asked the dog of a companion, "do anything to stop this kind of hooliganism?" Being. There is what one wants to know and wants to be, and also what one can know and can be. Deny these limitations and people will give you anything you want. Affirm them and you have exercised true selfishness, telling the truth. Talking. I want you to take care of yourself, because next time I see you, I want to talk to you, not about you. And when I no longer have to talk to you, I want to be able to talk about you for the edification of others. Anticipated. A student was spending time in companionship with a sage. If anyone were to say, "Stand on your head and you will attain eternal felicity," some people would do it, said the student. People thirst for any directions, however inept. "My child," answered the sage, "that is precisely what most of them have been doing these past 10,000 years. Solving problems. No problem can be solved merely by assuming that it can be solved and that its solution lies in hard work, any more than that its solution lies in inaction. Yet so much the reverse do the facts appear, that rabble-rousers and pretended mystics use the problem-solving argument to keep people busy. Solutions come through knowledge, so much so that where there is real knowledge, there is no real problem. Virtue. If your own vice happens to be the search for virtue, recognize that it is so. The cheese. Once upon a time, there was a cheese. A number of cheese mites took up residence in it. As time passed, they bored more and more holes in the cheese, and of course they multiplied. Then, one day, there were so many holes in the cheese that it collapsed into a powder, leaving the mites scrambling in the ruins of their home. "What traitor is responsible for this?" screamed the mites. They formed parties, each opposed to the other, whose objectives were to restore the former ideal situation. Some mites, it is true, found another cheese. But as for the majority, they are fairly rapidly consuming the remaining cheese powder. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.